My patient safety story probably begins in August 2003 when my mum suffered a stroke. And up to that point, I hadn't really had a lot to do with the healthcare system as a patient or as a family member of a patient. She had a lot of health issues that we had dealt with along the way besides the stroke. She had heart problems and she had kidney problems, but she was doing well. She'd recovered amazingly well from the stroke. But in the late fall of 2004, she started to develop swelling and shortness of breath, swelling in her face and abdomen. She was finally admitted to the hospital in January of 2005 for some further testing and treatment. And we were really worried about her because she really wasn't well, and we weren't sure sort of what was going to be happening. But the care she got was excellent, so we were going on the premise that she would be fine. I wish you could have met my mom. She was a very strong woman. She was gracious, she was intelligent, she was compassionate. Losing her was such a huge loss, I can't even tell you. Losing her the way we did was unthinkable. I admire her greatly. I've been told I'm a lot like her. I couldn't receive a higher compliment. When she was admitted to the hospital, at that time there were long waits in the hallway on a gurney. She was finally seen by a doctor. A CAT scan was done of her lungs. Then she was admitted. The next morning, an x-ray was requested to x-ray her lungs because they were concerned about circulation and fluid buildup around her lungs. She was taken to the x-ray department on a gurney. I went with her. The technician requested that she stand up in front of the wall x-ray, so we were able to get her off the stretcher and standing in front of the wall x-ray, and there's two rails that you hold on to, but I had to hold her from the side because she was very weak. And so that he did it as quickly as possible, and we got her back on the gurney, and then she was taken back to her room. They requested another x-ray that afternoon. So I went with her again, and this time I said to the technician, please don't have her stand up. She's too weak to do that. So they did the x-ray, the chest x-ray with her propped up on the gurney that time. And she went back to her room, and I stayed. And then after I went home that evening, she was very tired and she'd gone to sleep. So I went home. And then we received a phone call about 11 o'clock that night. Mom had been sent for an abdominal x-ray. The doctor that was on was very concerned about how swollen her abdomen was, so decided that she should have an abdominal x-ray. She was taken back down to the diagnostic imaging department on a gurney, and somehow or other rolled off the gurney onto the floor between the gurney and the wall. She was taken immediately to the emergency department because the diagnostic imaging department is right next door, and she was treated for her injuries. She was severely bruised. Her face was severely bruised. She had a split lip which needed stitches. She'd bitten her tongue. Her knee had a gash on it, and where the IV had been on the top of her hand, it had ripped out. So my son and I flew to the hospital. I went in to see her. By that time, they had moved her from the emergency department back up to the ward. When I went in, there was nurses all over the place there, and they looked in shock. I looked at her and could hardly even tell it was my mom. She was that badly bruised. She looked awful. My son didn't come in. And again, I said, what happened? And they said, well, we don't know. but they were obviously really, really upset. Where she'd bitten her tongue, it was very swollen. She couldn't swallow very well. She couldn't speak, but she could certainly answer questions, yes or no, and she was certainly conscious. I was horrified. Walking into that room, I was horrified, because you don't expect somebody to be injured in the hospital. You just don't expect that to happen. After I'd been up to see Mom in the hospital, I went home and I documented. I wrote down everything that had happened from when she'd first gone into the hospital 3 days before. First thing Monday morning, I phoned the patient concerns office and spoke to someone there. The lady that I talked to had no information. She had not heard about this happening at all. She was really upset. She asked me, I told her I documented everything. She asked me to email it to her. I did. She called me back and arranged for a meeting with me and the diagnostic imaging manager and herself in Mom's room. The meeting itself went well. They had all the documentation that I had done for them, and they said that they would follow up, is what I was told, was that they would follow up. My mom was admitted to the hospital on a Thursday. She fell Saturday evening and she died Thursday evening, so a week from admitting to when she died. That's really hard. That's really hard to take as a family member. 2 weeks after Mom died, I received a phone call from the patient concerns office about setting up a meeting for us to go and talk to a senior representative from the Calgary Health Region. We went really well prepared with a list of questions. They said that when they examined the gurney that Mom had been on, because it had been taken out of service after she fell, they found that where the mattress is, there are Velcro pads on the bottom of the mattress and on the top of the stretcher, the gurney itself, and they're supposed to be aligned, and one of them wasn't aligned. So they said the mattress slipped somehow, and that's why my mom had fallen. And they said, well, what about the brakes? We were told the brakes weren't locked. Well, we don't know about the brakes, but the mattress wasn't aligned on the gurney. Well, what about the brakes? Well, the mattress wasn't aligned. So they, were very nice. Dr. Johnston, he did apologize. At the beginning of the meeting, he said, when you take somebody to the hospital, you expect them to be safe. We didn't do that for your mom. At the end of the meeting, he said, well, we hope this meeting has met your needs as a family, which was nice of him to say, but it felt really scripted. That's not the end of the story. In the fall of 2005, in Calgary, was the Halifax 5 Patient Safety Conference. In the Calgary Herald and on the news, there were interviews with people from the Calgary Health Region about new patient safety policies that were being introduced. One of the people who was interviewed was Dr. Ward Flemons, and he was speaking about a new disclosure policy. And when I saw him interviewed and when I heard that, I thought, I can't just let this go. I have to try again. So I wrote another letter to the patient concerns manager and said, I've seen this interview. I'd like to talk to Dr. Johnston again. I think he felt more comfortable talking to me person to person rather than administration to somebody that they really wished would just not ask these questions. And while he couldn't answer everything definitively, I did receive a much better answer to a lot of the questions. Yes, an investigation was done. These are the recommendations that have been put in place and are in practice. And that's what I needed to know. When a completely random thing happens and somebody is injured in the hospital, the absolute bottom line is, if people aren't honest with you about what's happened, you don't trust. I think my mom would be happy. I know my mom would be proud of what I'm doing.